Hey, so to round off the year, I'm going through everything that I've watched this year, all the movies, but in this video, it's just going to be from the months of October to December, because I've done all the other months. Been doing it quarterly if you've been watching this channel. Doesn't matter. These are the last 3 months of the year. First up, the first category is in cinemas. So the first movie that I watched in October was The Exorcist Believer, which I thought was pretty not good. It was like a movie that played everything in the most safe way that it possibly could, and for that reason it just ended up being pretty boring and pretty much a rehash of everything that's come before it. It was the most generic possessor type movie that I've seen in probably a long time, to be honest, because I typically avoid possession kind of horror movies. It's not my favorite. So anyway, next up I saw The Creator, which I had heard very good things. I thought it was okay. I wasn't crazy about it, but I did appreciate that there was this surprisingly low-budgeted original sci-fi film that was doing pretty well, that people were, kind of raving about and stuff. That's just exciting. It wasn't part of some big IP. It wasn't part of some big franchise or whatever. That's kind of just something to appreciate these days. Then I saw Dumb Money, which I liked quite a bit, but I think I lacked the know-how when it came to knowing about the stocks and all that shit that was going on in the movie, and also we don't have GameStop in Australia, so I'm like, I can figure it out, but I'm just saying there was some stuff to it that didn't speak to me directly, if that makes any sense. Now we're up to November, and I saw Five Nights at Freddy's, which is a series of video games I've never played in my life before, but I liked the movie quite a bit. I didn't love it, but I liked it quite a bit. It was a little bit more childish than I was expecting, which maybe I should have been expecting, since they are games that appeal to kids, apparently. But I don't know, being somebody that's not that familiar with it, I was expecting a fun horror comedy type of thing. Took itself a little more seriously than I was expecting for the what it's about, but I don't know, it was okay. Then I saw The Marvels, which was also okay. I would say viciously okay, viciously average. Like, I don't have any like huge complaints about it, but it's also definitely one of the weaker Marvel movies. That's not because they're women though. I want to fucking point that out. Then I saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, which was honestly one of my favorite movies of the year, easily, which I was not expecting, because when I saw the trailer, I legitimately thought it looked really bad, but it blew me away in just about every single way. The animation was like really cool, but also really ugly and gnarly in like a purposeful way. It was supposed to. Like, they weren't afraid of showing like gross mutants and all that kind of shit, which is kind of cool, but also it's like a very surprisingly emotional movie at times. Maybe it was just me on the day or whatever. I was feeling extra sensitive or something, but hey, this movie got to me, man. Then I saw The Hunger Games 5, Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I remembered it. Which is another movie that I had no expectations for, but absolutely loved. It made it onto my top 10 list for the year because it was just that fucking good, to be honest. And look, Hunger Games is a franchise that I overall do like, but it's not something that I'd ever be like, oh yeah, that's one of my absolute favorites, But this movie, man, like, I don't know. I think it's going to be one that's going to be quite remembered, at least in terms of like movies I love. Then I saw Thanksgiving, which was just sort of like an instant horror classic. No, it wasn't like the best movie I saw this year or anything like that. But again, much like The Creator, it's just something to appreciate in it being like this original horror film. The Creator wasn't horror, but you get my point. Now we're up to December, and the only movie that I saw in cinemas this month was Aquaman 2, just yesterday, which I thought, like The Marvels, was pretty viciously average. It was okay. It was much like the first one. Honestly, it was very much like the first one. If you actually think about it, they bring the same bad guys back to defeat them again and stuff. Spoilers or whatever. Aquaman, he saves the day. I don't think that's much of a spoiler. But the funny thing is, this is the last of the DCEU movies now. It's done. It's over with a whimper. Like, what the fuck was the DCEU? What the fuck was Aquaman 2? Unfortunately, Aquaman 2 is easily James Wan's worst film. I wish he'd stop making movies like these. Like, cool, you made Fast and the Furious in 2015, man. You made the 7th one. Cool. Get back to horror now. What are you doing? Come on. I mean, I know that movie, and then also Aquaman, the first one, made $1 billion, so that's quite some incentive for him to keep going with the action blockbusters and stuff, but I wish he'd go back to horror. And now we're up to 2023 movies that I watched at home. First up is one that I watched with my parents. I would never have chosen this one ever in my life. It's called The Appleton Ladies Potato Race. It is this super low budget Australian movie that nobody has ever seen or heard of, and it's just it's just an old person movie. That's what I can say about it. I don't want to be too mean to it. It is like an indie project and all that shit, but like, I think it's safe to say that it's not exactly a movie for me. Then I watched a comedy special, just a stand-up thing, Shane Gillis' Beautiful Dogs, which was okay. Then I watched The Flash, which I hadn't seen in cinemas earlier in the year when it came out, and I actually liked The Flash quite a bit. Like, a lot of people complained about it being really ugly and shit, but like, I don't know, man, the CGI and stuff isn't exactly what I'm super, like, you know, hypercritical about and everything when I'm watching these sorts of movies and stuff. I'm in it for like the story and jokes and shit and whatever. I don't know. It was fun. It was whatever. Like, I wasn't hugely invested in it. Maybe that's part of it. Like, other people maybe love The Flash and they were like, what is this shit? But when I watched it, I'm like, this is alright. Does that make any sense? It's kind of like when normies went to go see Rise of Skywalker, say, and like it didn't infuriate them. And that's because, what were they expecting? They weren't hugely invested. But for those that were, you know, different audiences. Anyway, now we're already up to the month of November. First up, I watched a movie called Naiad, which is about this woman who, she swam some incredible, like world record distance from some place to some other place, from Florida to the Keys or something. I don't know. She swam for like 60 hours straight or something, and there's a movie about it, and it was okay. This is another movie that I watched with my parents. Wouldn't have been one that I would have chosen myself. Then I watched The Killer, which I had huge expectations for, but it kind of let me down, if I'm being honest. It was a good movie overall, but I would say that, I don't know, I was pretty disappointed that it ended up just being pretty much a John Wick clone, except it wasn't really an action movie, because it was all about spies and the spy world and hitmen or whatever, that kind of shit. And I don't know, I guess you know that going in, but I was less invested in like who was behind everything and more just hoping that the movie was gonna be about the killer killing indiscriminately. We don't even know why, because I don't care why. I loved the opening scene of this movie, which was just Michael Fassbender's The Killer setting up to kill a guy. That was awesome. I absolutely loved it. And then he fucks that up and the rest of the movie becomes a generic like, revenge thing. I gotta cover my ass and kill all the, you know, people behind this operation and everything, blah blah blah, like every other fucking movie like this that you've ever seen. That's what The Bourne Identity is about. That's what half the James Bond movies are about, probably. All that shit. I don't know, I was just disappointed that it ended up being quite a bit more generic than I thought it was going to be, you know. David Fincher's a great filmmaker. It's made very well. I just wish it went in a slightly different direction. That's all. Then I watched a movie called Totally Killer, which I also had probably unfairly highly expectations for, but you know what? Yeah, it wasn't that great. This is like a horror comedy slasher thing, like a weird time travel 80s throwback or whatever. And, you know, you say it's a slasher movie with time travel, much like Happy Death Day. I have high expectations with that, but it ended up just being like, I don't know. It didn't lean heavily into the comedy, for one, I gotta say, so that disappointed me. Then I watched a movie with my dad called Big George Foreman. I think it's fairly obvious what that is about. And it was okay, but it had like this huge heavy lean on like Jesus being important in his life and being the reason he was successful and stuff, and that didn't exactly speak to me. I thought it started to get a little bit too preachy, a little bit too corny and stuff in that way, and it was kind of lame, but I don't know, it was a fine movie, I suppose. Then I watched another movie with my parents that they chose called Jones Family Christmas, another indie Australian movie that nobody's heard of or seen, and it was absolutely fine, I guess. Then we're up to December, and I'm including this even though I shouldn't. Plagiarism and YouTube, a YouTube video by H Bomber Guy. No, this is not a movie. This is a YouTube video essay, kind of a drama video, to be honest, talking about like calling out people who have plagiarized on YouTube over the years. And yeah, absolutely does not count as a movie if I'm being honest, but it went for 4 hours and I watched the whole fucking thing, so I'm counting it here, sorry. And it was on Letterboxd. If it's on Letterboxd, it counts. Then I watched a movie called Leave the World Behind, which you've probably heard of because everybody was talking about it for like a few weeks ago. And I thought it was okay. This is like an apocalyptic movie and stuff, and like, not much happens though. I don't know. I didn't love it. Then I watched a movie called Flora and Son, which is like this musical dramedy type of thing made by the guy that made Begin Again and Sing Street, and I thought that it was pretty fantastic, and I really like the music in it and all that stuff. I know like maybe that's not how, like whether you should say it's a good movie or not based on like the music in it, and usually I never ever would, but for some reason, it counts here. Then I watched Bottoms, which everybody was raving about. Bottoms, the like teen high school comedy thing about these girls that start a fight club to impress other girls. And you know what? It wasn't that good, if I'm being honest, and I feel bad saying that because I wanted to love it. This is another movie that I went in with really high expectations, so maybe that is saying something. When I go in with high expectations, that's a recipe for disaster here. I think what I was expecting with this was more something along the lines of like not another teen movie, levels of absurdity and satire, but it ended up playing things a lot more straight than I was expecting. They even try to add drama in this film. Like everything was actually played like a real movie. So it's very unfair for me to be like, well, that wasn't what I wanted personally, so it wasn't that good. You know what I mean? It was funny, it was entertaining, I did like it. I think I was expecting something that it wasn't going in, and so that kind of screwed things up for me a little bit. But this probably deserves a rewatch, this one, because, you know, everybody's been talking about it. I did like it. Wrong expectations. I think that's all. Then I watched a documentary called Monster Inside, which is about McCamey Manor and his whole weird, extreme haunted house over there in America. And it was very, very similar to another documentary that I watched a couple years ago and covered on the channel called Haunters Art of the Scare, which covered McCamey Manor and a whole load of other topics as well. This only covered McCamey Manor, pretty much went over only the exact same information with maybe a little bit extra, and for that reason I gotta say that I just don't think that this documentary really did enough. It wasn't really like invasive enough, is that the right word? It wasn't really informative enough. It was just pretty basic, to be honest, and I wasn't that impressed with it. Then I watched Gran Turismo, which again I hadn't seen earlier in the year, and yeah, this is just like a solid biopic sports movie type thing. I liked it quite a bit. Then I watched the Mario movie, Super Mario Bros, and I kind of skimmed through this, to be honest. Like, I don't know, man. This is not a movie for me. Maybe if you're a kid or if you're a huge fan of Mario or something, which I'm not, but to me this was just really boring. I don't know, man. It didn't connect with me. Yeah, it had good animation. You know, Illumination does that. They do good animation, but they make shit films, and I would say that Mario is another addition to that repertoire. Then I watched It's a Wonderful Knife, which I kind of liked, to be honest. I didn't hate it. Everybody was shitting on this movie, saying like it was basically so bad it's good kind of thing. You laugh at it, it's complete shit. I didn't mind it. It was just like an average kind of slasher movie that was okay. Then I watched a movie called 57 Seconds, and I gotta be honest, I kind of skimmed through this one too, like Mario, because it just wasn't very good. Then I watched a movie called Your Lucky Day, which is about somebody that wins a lottery ticket and then is subsequently robbed of that lottery ticket immediately, instantly, within the store that he buys it in. And the rest of the film is about a group of people all trying to basically win the lottery ticket off of the other ones, or like try to negotiate a plan or a way out of here after somebody ends up getting killed. Basically, it's just this really intense thriller from there, and it's pretty fantastic. Then I watched a movie called They Cloned Tyrone, which I didn't really like all that much, if I'm being honest. It was okay, but I'd heard really good things. Another case of really high expectations, I think. Basically, this was like Get Out, but not nearly as good, if you ask me. I had read somewhere that it was basically Get Out if Donald Glover had directed it, and that feels pretty similar, because this feels like an Atlanta episode, and I don't really love Atlanta, to be honest. I've watched most of it, but anyway, whatever. Next, I watched Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Yes, we all know it's a very long title, blah blah blah, and this was a movie that I think was disappointing as well. I don't know. I've liked the Mission Impossible movies pretty much since Ghost Protocol. I've loved them, I would say. Ghost Protocol and Fallout especially, I think are fantastic. This one is just like, it's almost 3 hours long and nothing happens, man. Like, they really, really stretched this thing out and they don't really commit too much. It's all set up. There's a few like cool stunts and all that kind of stuff, but it's like, there is very little plot in this 3-hour movie, and it's infuriating to sit through a little bit. Then I watched a movie called A Million Miles Away. I chose this to watch with my parents because I thought it seemed like a nice one, whatever. This is an astronaut biopic, and it's pretty basic, pretty straightforward, but it's like emotional and stuff. I like it. Then older movie. First up, I watched Trading Places, which had some problematic things in there, just by the way. Older comedies often do. Didn't love this movie. Then I also watched The Three Amigos, which I also didn't love. In fact, it was even worse. Then I watched a few stand-up specials again. Nate Bargatze, The Greatest Average American. Nate Bargatze, Tennessee Kid. Nate Bargatze, Hello World. I discovered this Nate guy just this year, just in October. And so I watched all of the specials that were on Netflix or whatever. And yeah, that dude's pretty awesome. He's like this clean comic. So he doesn't like swear. His jokes aren't all about like sex and stuff. And I don't know, like, you know, those sorts of things can be funny too, but there's something to appreciate about like just this wholesome comedian, you know? Then I watched the complete opposite, which was in Eddie Murphy's Delirious from like the 80s or something, and this was just like every second line, like he says something sexist, something racist, something, you know, all this, like the whole thing was completely offensive and just shit, to be honest. None of it was funny, I would say. Sorry, people that fucking love Eddie Murphy, I guess. Sorry. I thought it was terrible. Then I watched a movie called Shattered Glass, which was okay. Then I watched The YouTube Effect, a documentary about the YouTube effect. And honestly, it wasn't that good. I went into this one with high expectations too, because I thought it sounded really interesting. I was like, I was excited to learn some things about YouTube, and I feel like I didn't really learn very much. Also, they talked a lot about politics, American politics specifically. And I'm just like, I don't care. This isn't what I wanted to, like, this isn't the side of YouTube that I wanted to get into. Like, I get that it's important, there's a place to talk about that, but I just wanted to talk about YouTube itself, you know? That's what I was hoping for. Maybe it's another case of me hoping for the wrong thing. I don't know. Then I watched this is another fucking movie movie that isn't a movie and shouldn't count. I watched the Roblox Oof. This is another H-Bomber Guy video that goes for fucking hours on end, and it was on Letterboxd. And I'm the only one that's rated it on Letterboxd, by the way. And yeah, so that's that, I suppose. It was good. It's about the origins of the oof sound. I'll play a sound clip. And it was alright. Then I watched Die Hard 2 and 3 with my dad for Christmas. We had watched Die Hard like last year or something, and I do not like the original Die Hard, hot take. So I was trying 2 and 3, which I had never seen before. Die Hard 2 was okay. I pretty much felt the same way as about the first one. It's like, I don't know, man, it's just not really for me. It's okay, but it's just not something that I would ever choose to watch again. Die Hard 3 though. Die Hard 3 is the best one, and it's good, and I like it quite a bit. Die Hard 3 shows us the mistakes of the movies that came before it, in which they should have been buddy cop movies. Samuel L. Jackson's addition in Die Hard 3 is the syrup, the salt, the sugar, the topping that we needed in the first 2 Die Hard movies, if you ask me. Just absolute perfection once he's in there. Plus, it's a much cooler plot where it's like basically the Riddler giving them like these sort of like challenges and riddles and shit that they gotta run around in the city and stuff to prevent bad things from happening. I don't know. It's like a death game movie a little bit, sort of, and it's just a hell of a lot more fun than the first 2, if you ask me. Die Hard 3 fucks. Okay, now we're up to rewatches. First up, I watched Looper. I rewatched Looper, which I had not really remembered, if I'm being honest. I thought I did. Going in, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember. There's like, he's got to kill his past self or future self or whatever and all that stuff. I get it. But then there's the whole thing with the telekinesis and all that stuff, which I sort of forgot about, and I don't know. It's a good movie. And I really like the ending. The ending is absolute perfection. Then I rewatched Monsters, Inc. With my wife, and this is just a classic. This is a classic. I love it. Monsters, Inc. is absolutely one of my favorite movies of all time. Super quotable. Me and my wife quote this all the time. There's like 1,000 quotes in here. And just saying 1,000 reminds me of one of the quotes where he says, I'd kidnap 1,000 children before they took me alive. And I watched 50-50, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Seth Rogen cancer dramedy, and I absolutely love this movie very, very much. Then I rewatched The Social Network, which, yes, is very, very good, like everybody says, but I'm not as hyped about it as everybody else is, to be honest. Then I watched Good Will Hunting. Then I watched Tag, the comedy Tag, Delivery Man, the Vince Vaughn comedy. Then I rewatched the first and second Spider-Verse movies with my parents to show them. They loved the first one, and they didn't think they were going to, because they give no fucks about Marvel and superheroes and Spider-Man and cartoons and all that shit. They very much were not expecting to like it. Then loved it. Loved the first one because it was like this personal movie about Miles, and it was a comedy and stuff. stuff and they really liked it. But then we watched the second one and they weren't that into it, especially my mum, because it was way too much for them. I think it was too nerdy. I think the whole Spider-Verse stuff and all the various Spider-Man and shit, it was too much for them. You know what I mean? So yeah, but it was good to rewatch those, and I could see how just amazing they were all over again, you know? I mean, the second one only came out this year, but there's something magical about those damn movies. Then I rewatched Talk to Me to show to my sister because she hadn't seen it, and yep, that's a fucking classic as well. I only came out this year, but my god. Talk to Me is a movie that people are going to talk about for years to come. It's going to be up there in the echelon of, you know, Hereditary and Get Out and stuff. I think Talk to Me has earned its place among those sorts of peers, and yeah, for good reason. Talk to Me is amazing. Then I rewatched Haunter's Art of the Scare, also to show my sister. And then I rewatched About Time, one of my all-time favorite movies. Then I rewatched Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You, more of my all-time favorite movies. We're getting into the holiday season, and rather than watching a bunch of Christmas movies, I started rewatching some of my favorite movies. So then I also rewatched La La Land. That probably is my favorite movie, you know, barring Nightcrawler, which is my favorite movie of all time. La La Land is like number 2. Then I did watch a couple Christmas movies. Love the Coopers. This was a rewatch. I had seen this back in like 2015 or something when it came out, and I remember liking it quite a bit, so I rewatched it and it was okay. It's like a cute movie. It's nothing crazy good or whatever. It's not going to change your life, but like, it's cute. And then I also rewatched Violent Night. I watched this with my family to show them. It was their first time watch. It was a rewatch for me. They weren't crazy about it. It was too violent for my dad. He didn't love that aspect to it. My brother-in-law thought it was kind of boring. My sister was like not watching. My mum literally didn't watch, and just nobody liked it. It was embarrassing. And now we're up to TV shows. First up was Loki season 2, which I liked the first episode and the last episode, and then everything that came in between was like, yeah, okay, whatever. It kind of felt like filler, even though it wasn't, because it was only 6 episodes. I watched a TV show called Lessons in Chemistry, starring Brie Larson, about a scientist, a female scientist who was like looked down upon by her male counterparts and stuff, and doubted and everything, but like, you know, she proves everybody wrong and stuff, and it was really good. It was really good. I really liked that show. And I've also started the show called Shrinking with Jason Segel, and I haven't finished it. I've only watched the first 3 so far, but I love it quite a bit, and I will finish watching it sometime after this video. And that is everything that I watched the past few months, and that is everything that I watched for the year if you've watched the other quarterly videos that I made previously. So that's that. If you want me to edit a thing where I put all of them together in one video, I can. I know some people do that with these sorts of videos, but it seems unnecessary to me. I don't know. Let me know. And I guess that's about all that I have to say. So do the things, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that shit, the YouTuber things. And Maddie, goodbye.